In 5 minutes' time, it will be the start of the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nurburgring. You saw the Mercedes-Benz specially erected grandstand in the top right-hand picture of your screens as you rejoined us. And you now look at the grid with Damon Hill's car in pole position and Jacques Villeneuve, his teammate, in second position. And that is Rubens Barrichello, the Brazilian driver, who is in an excellent fifth place on the grid in the Jordan Peugeot. That's the grandstand that we're all talking about here. Fabulous view you get from it. And Barrichello's Peugeot engine seems to be getting better and better every race. He was extremely quick in practice, and in fact on one of the sectors was the fastest of all. Rubens Barrichello, that of course is David Coulthard with the Saltire on his blue helmet, the cross of St Andrew, and on the left of the grid you saw Villeneuve. So, front row, two Williams Renaults, the class of the field. Will they be at the end of the race? Schumacher's Ferrari, the highest of the two. Alesi, the top Benetton. Barrichello, as I said, in fifth position. That's an excellent grid position for David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes, ahead of his teammate Mika Häkkinen. Irvine in the second Ferrari, followed by Berger's Benetton. Häkkinen down at ninth. Frentzen, the other German, in the race in 10th position in the Sauber. Martin Brundle, 11th. Jos Verstappen, 13th in the TWR Arrows, is the way we describe it now. Olivier Panis, the Ligier, that's Katayama Salo's teammate. Fisichella is substituting for Tasso Marquez, the Brazilian driver, in the second Minardi. There are 20 starters in this race. There were 22 trying to get into it, but neither of the 240 cars of Monttermini and Monttermini failed to, but sorry, let me get it again. Monttermini and Bader both failed to qualify, as you look at the eyes of Gerhard Berger, and he's in 8th position.
Well, just considering the overall form that we've seen this weekend, Damon Hill has clearly dominated this season so far, and quite frankly, no one is showing any signs of catching up. Hill was in absolutely superb form in qualifying, taking pole position by 0.8 of a second from his own teammate Jacques Villeneuve, so that's Hill's third pole position on the trot, so he's well out in front, and I would indeed expect Damon to pull out relatively quickly. I think that Jacques Villeneuve, despite reckoning that this was a fairly easy circuit to learn, doesn't seem to have shown the consistency of Damon's pace once again. Of course, the big thing we don't know, and we won't know until the race gets underway, is how much weight of fuel these cars are carrying, and that'll depend on how many stops they intend to make. We're going to have to interpret their relative levels of pace in that light. And further back from that, Benetton have made some good progress with their car, particularly, in fact, during the weekend. They did some testing beforehand with the new front suspension. Didn't work too well to start with, but now Alesi is feeling much happier with his car. He, in fact, had an off on Friday when his car understeered, and that's the front sliding wide on one of the corners. And then further back, I think the disappointment, it has to be said, is Ferrari. Because for this race, Ferrari have gone back to the Paca 1996 car. They went away for the last two races in Brazil and Argentina to a bit of a cobble-up. They used the 1995 rear end and gearbox and suspension because of gearbox reliability problems. Now they've been working on those and put the whole lot together. But it has to be said that Ferrari's fortunes really don't look a lot better, in so much that Schumacher qualified fourth in Australia, fourth in Brazil, second in Argentina, and he is third here at Nurburgring with teammate Eddie Irvine in, again, a 1996 configuration car back in seventh place. What Ferrari are lacking is straight line speed. Of that there is absolutely no doubt.
We wait now to start the formation lap. Drivers have been known to go off on that one. I remember David Coulthard last year had that problem in the Williams Renault at this very circuit. So on the right, Damon Hill. On the left, Jacques Villeneuve from Canada. There's the man who carries the hopes of Germany on his shoulders, and there's the proof, Michael Schumacher with the flags of Germany and Ferrari waving all round this circuit.
So away they go on the formation lap. A lot of wheel spin from Michael Schumacher, putting some rubber down to help his grip. This is the main straight. They're going to be pulling 180 miles an hour in sixth gear. when they're underway racing. Currently warming up the tyres, brand new tyres on Schumacher's Ferrari, telltale sign there with those flashing labels, the white labels on them. Then they go through that first right left-hander. That's about 90 miles an hour, third gear, where they're coming out of the left-hand part of that now in the background of the picture. Now down to the next left-hander, turn 3 there. That's 110 miles an hour in third gear. Down to second for this hairpin, just 60 miles an hour. Then up through the gears and pulling down to 175 miles an hour in sixth gear. That's what we call the first intermediate. Just before that right-hand hairpin, we're going to see some gap times between drivers during the race. This left-right is the fastest corner on the circuit. 145 miles an hour through there in fourth gear, maybe fifth gear, depending on the gear ratios. This left-hander we're coming up to now, this was Damon Hill's nemesis last year. He spun, got on the curves and smite the wall on the left. I'm sure he will not be doing that now. And then into the right-hander. These are both 90 miles an hour corners. Coming up, absolutely flat-out kink. But when these cars pull up to the start, we need to keep a careful eye, I reckon, on Jean Alesi, because Alesi is a legendary fast starter. He's going to be quicker than Schumacher in the race, I'm pretty sure of that. But he's in fourth place. He's going to want to get ahead of Schumacher. And other ones to watch out for. David Coulthard, sixth place in the McLaren. His best qualifying, a great result. David's a good starter as well, so we're going to keep a good eye out for him. Those bollards right and left through that second gear, 70 miles an hour chicane, you're going to see those get knocked over, but generally they're going to pop back up again because they are a new sort of device that they run here at the Nurburgring, because of course straight lining chicanes is a great way of saving some time. But it looks to me like Schumacher is going to be determined to have a real fast start, because going on new tyres will help your early lap pace, but it may just be a penalty a bit later on when they start to potentially lose performance, maybe overheat.
So, as ever, the responsibility is on the shoulders of Damon Hill. Pole position, wants to get away into that first corner first, so does everybody else. Look for Jean Alesi, who is behind Jacques Villeneuve. The heat pouring off those engines. It needs to be a quick start to get the cars away without adversely affecting their clutches. Damon Hill there in the background, Jacques Villeneuve. Behind Hill is Schumacher. Behind Villeneuve is Alesi. And when the last red light and the rest of them go out, it will be time for the race to begin. Wonderful start from Villeneuve, who catapults into the lead, past Damon Hill, who leads into the first corner. Well, there's Mika Häkkinen is right up there. That's an incredible start from him. And Damon Hill is down in about fifth position, it looked to me. So it is Villeneuve leading. It is Häkkinen in the McLaren Mercedes in second position. Barrichello is up to third. Schumacher is fourth. Damon Hill is fifth. And that was Ukyo Katayama being pushed in the Tyrrell Yamaha, and Villeneuve's start was magnificent, and you can see what Damon Hill has got to do. He's got to get past Schumacher, that'll be tough. Then he's got to get past Barrichello, then he's got to get past Häkkinen, and even then he will only be up with Villeneuve, who, as you can see, is streaking away from the Mercedes. And my apologies, it's David Coulthard who's come through into second place, not Mika Häkkinen. So, Coulthard from sixth on the grid. Great start.
And a clean start too, but after hyping up Jean Alesi, well, he made a lousy start. But Gerhard Berger did even worse, and I wonder if there's some kind of minor problem on the start with the Benetton cars, because Berger went off the line with his left front wheel absolutely locked, smoking. Eventually it freed off, and it looked like his left front brake bound on and then freed itself, and that's what certainly held up Berger. Maybe Alesi had some degree of symptom too, or maybe it was a plain, simple bad start. But a tremendous job from Coulthard. That start from Coulthard, we did say he was a good starter, but that's absolutely fantastic.
And already Damon Hill is swarming about behind Michael Schumacher's Ferrari as Berger comes racing through and hits Salo in the Yamaha-powered Tyrrell, and off goes
and that's
Alesi. So Schumacher has got Hill in front of him. Berger was in trouble there. Alesi looks as though he is out of the race already on lap 2 of the Grand Prix of Europe. And meantime, Villeneuve, of course, is putting the fastest laps of the race up on account of the fact that he is in front with a clear track. And he's nearly a second ahead of David Coulthard. That is Gerhard Berger in the pits. on lap 2 of the Grand Prix of Europe, and Schumacher is tackling Barrichello.
Indeed, and what a torrid race for Benetton already. It looked there very much. We may get a replay, I suspect we will, that Alesi came up the inside there of... Here we are. Here.
Look at Hill. Hill is right up along, and he's going through and that's at the chicane, trying to take Schumacher.
Absolutely, Hill there has got the straight line speed advantage over Schumacher. He desperately cannot afford to get tangled up. Hill is really going to have to drive carefully now, because Schumacher is not going to do anything to make it easy. But Alesi just seemed to do a complete kamikaze maneuver. He got by Eddie Irvine's Ferrari, I think it was, and then Salo was coming across, but Alesi was going far too fast to have a chance of stopping and taking the innocent Salo out. And it looked like that was Gerhard Berger in the pits. Now, I suspect that was a consequence. There we go. Let's have a look at it there. There he is. Look, poor Salo is cutting in. Alesi was concentrating so much, and in fact, he was getting by one of the TWR Arrows car. Here's another look. There is Alesi. He's up the inside, and Salo hasn't seen him at all, and I'm afraid both of them fighting for the same part of the track, and the Arrows continues on its way. But Berger in the pits, and he's having a tyre change. Now, whether he's got a brake problem too, it certainly looked that way off the line. We'll have to keep an eye on his lap times to see how he goes.
Well, 0 out of 10 to Jean Alesi, and my abject apologies to David Coulthard, because that was a crackerjack start of his, which took him up to second position. You see him there, second. Barrichello in the gold-coloured Jordan is in third position. Damon Hill looking for every opportunity to get past Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, and this is very interesting because up to now this season, Damon Hill has been in front of Schumacher. Yesterday, Schumacher said Hill is all right when he's in front, but he's not so hot when he's under pressure trying to get past people. Now, let's see who's right.
Now, Damon has got a straight line speed advantage with his Williams Renault over Schumacher. It's about 8 miles an hour on the fastest part of the circuit, and that's before that chicane that they've just been through. He's going to have to position himself carefully. He's not going to be doing it here. Puff of smoke from Schumacher's left front wheel, surely going to that left-hander. Now, Damon may be able to get close enough through this hairpin to have a go up at the inside on the next right-hand hairpin. It looks like he's too far away. We're with Schumacher. No, Schumacher's got the line. This is 60 miles an hour, second gear. Now, Damon's going to be able to do nothing up the hill, nothing through this fast left and right, but potentially into the next left. That is too far behind again. And of course, the closer that Hill gets, as with any of these drivers, we may see a flash of Williams on the left. No, Schumacher is going to be probably about the hardest man out there to overtake. Now, this is where Damon Hill should be right on Schumacher's tail. Well, Damon's not. But that was where he was so very, very close before. The problem is with these cars is that when you get closer than the distance Damon is now to the car in front, you lose the front downforce. Your front wings don't work as well. That means the front of the car slides wide. You can't corner as quickly, so you naturally fall back again. So it really is a difficult situation. I think with Damon Hill's performance advantage in terms of lap times and the straight line speed advantage that Williams has, he should be able to get by before the first round. And he's having a go now. No, he's tucking back in before the first round of pit stops.
Well, meantime, let's not lose sight of the fact that Jacques Villeneuve is leading this race by an incredible 3 seconds on lap 5. You see the battle for second, third, fourth, fifth places yourself. Coulthard, Barrichello, Schumacher and Damon Hill. But now Gerhard Berger is the fastest driver on the track after that pit stop of his. He's just gone round in 1 minute 22.5. And that is about 1.5 seconds outside the lap record, which is held by Michael Schumacher. Then it's on Renault, but that was last year, of course, in that sensational recovery of his. But it's early days yet. They've still got a comparatively heavy fuel load on, even if they're going to be making 2, maybe 3, very unlikely, tyre stops. So we're on lap 5 now of the Grand Prix of Europe. Jacques Villeneuve leads commandingly. Look at the gap between him as he goes up into turn 13, followed by Coulthard, and there are the next 3. The gold car is that of Barrichello. The scarlet car is that of Schumacher. There it is. And the blue and white car is that of Damon Hill, and he's in 5th position, 1/10 of a second, and going for it. Damon Hill gets alongside Schumacher and goes past. Damon Hill takes the Ferrari right in front of the massed grandstands and moves up into 4th position. And now, if we haven't seen action already, and my goodness we have, we're going to see a lot more. Damon's got past probably the most difficult man on the track. He's got in front of him now Rubens Barrichello. I think he'll quickly close the gap on the Jordan Peugeot, get past the Brazilian, and then he will be up to his old teammate David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes. That's the red and white car.
Great manoeuvre there from Hill. That's the one he should have pulled off, and indeed he did cleanly. And what he's got to show in this kind of situation, he's already started to do it until he gets to the front, assuming he can do of this race, is that now he's not making mistakes in the heat of battle when he's got cars around him. It's one thing being right out in front, not making mistakes and pulling away, but Schumacher correctly said this is the test. I don't think it's fair to say that he can't handle it. That's what Schumacher's trying to suggest, but I don't think that is the case. But Damon's going to have a harder job getting past Rubens Barrichello. He's close to that Jordan now because the Peugeot engine is very powerful. Peugeot have indeed made big strides. The thing that Hill does have is a pure lap time advantage, probably weight for weight, about 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds faster than the Jordan car. But along the straights, and that's where you need to be close to overtake, and that's Panis there in the Ligier. He's peeling back off into the pits, and problem for him there. And Irvine goes off. Irvine comes back. He was in 11th place. That's dropped him further back. And Irvine coming into the pits, what will be may have had a set. They were both close together. I think it's almost certain that they have had some clash together. We probably saw the aftermath of that with Irvine going off. Let's have another look at the start. Now look at Alesi, he's stopped. Look at Coulthard, under the bridge now, accelerating past Schumacher, flies by Schumacher. Well, the film speeded up there, I think, so it's not quite as dramatic as that looks. Coulthard looks at the outside, Villeneuve's on the inside. Brave move there from David Coulthard, cuts in, Rubens Barrichello tucks in behind Coulthard. Very, very good driving. Now we with Schumacher. Look at the way Coulthard goes off lane. He really got that stop, beautifully executed in the McLaren. And that's Barrichello just ahead of Schumacher. Puff of flame from the back of the Peugeot engine there, quite normally. Schumacher into 4th place. Not a good start from Schumacher. Here is Damon Hill, beautifully going by Michael Schumacher on lap 4 there. Look how close that Schumacher closes a little bit, but then Hill's now underway, and he's going to be pulling out quite quickly. Here's the replay there. That's the one we wondered. There it is. Panis tries the impossible up the inside of hardman Eddie Irvine. Irvine goes round, and there's the bollards being flattened. Now, we don't know what the damage is yet. We can have a... No, we're not going to see a corner of the left front wing, but we can see the flat spot certainly on the tyres of Eddie Irvine's Ferrari, so the least he'll need is a new set of tyres.
Lap 7, and that is the leader, Villeneuve. Look at the gap. David Coulthard second, and Damon Hill now doing to Barrichello what he did to Michael Schumacher on lap 8 of the race, and the lead of Jacques Villeneuve is up to 4.2 seconds. He's lapping in about 1 minute 22.6, marginally quicker than those behind him. He's got the advantage, of course, of a clear track before him. He can see in his mirrors what the gap is behind him as he turns into the left-hander, and now down towards the Hatzenbach-Bogen, dropping down towards the chicane, and now climbing as 3rd, 4th, 5th. Jordan, Williams, Ferrari. Eddie Irvine is out of the race in the Ferrari. So there's only one of the 2 Maranello cars left, and it's that of Michael Schumacher, who is in 5th position. You see it there as he hangs on to Damon Hill's Williams, and they exit turn 13 to start their 9th lap.
Yes, I think we can presume from that Eddie Irvine's left rear suspension was damaged by the front of that Ligier from Panis there. But what we're looking at just shows you how incredibly important the start of a Grand Prix is. Believe me, that if Damon Hill had made a good start and got away, he would have been pulling away, certainly ahead of Villeneuve at the moment, and we would have been looking at another likely, it may well still happen, another likely Hill win. 2 days of practice sessions, testing, and ultimately, most importantly, the qualifying session when Damon put in that superb lap, instantly wiped to nothing when Hill doesn't make a good start and drops back to 5th.
And what Damon needs to do now, of course, is to make sure he finishes this race and in the points. You get to be world champion as a result of consistently scoring, not going off and losing points. He's overcome one hurdle in the form of Schumacher's Ferrari. You can see that, as Jonathan predicted, it's proving to be very hard indeed to get alongside, never mind past, 23-year-old Rubens Barrichello, who's actually the second youngest driver in the race.
And indeed, Barrichello there, following Coulthard's McLaren, the red and white McLaren of David Coulthard. The Mercedes engine is powerful. It's perhaps about as powerful, probably not much in it with the Peugeot V10. These are all V10 engines these days. That's the Ligier Panis. They're having a look at that, I'm sure. And that's why it's proving a lot harder for Hill to get by Barrichello or Barrichello to get by David Coulthard. But Coulthard is under more pressure than he has been yet this year. This is the kind of position he's much more comfortable in terms of where he should be in a Grand Prix. Running second was familiar to him last year many times, but he's got to keep his cool, and if he does so, I think that he can keep these two drivers, Barrichello and Hill, behind him for the duration of the first round, until we get the first pit stops in another, well, it'll be 10, 15 laps, something like that. There's Gerhard Berger on his way. He's currently way back in 16th place. But good result from Frentzen, actually. Frentzen's up there in 7th, Martin Brundle is 8th, and Herbert 9th, Verstappen 10th.
Whatever they've done to Berger's Benetton is certainly making it quick and has overcome the problem. He's putting up a series of fastest laps. He's just gone round again. He's only in 16th place, but he's gone round in a whisker over 1 minute 22. And the race order on lap 10 in this 67-lap race. Villeneuve leading now by getting on towards 7 seconds, 6.7 to be exact. And then Coulthard, Barrichello, Hill, Schumacher and Hakkinen getting ever closer. It looks as though soon we may have both McLaren Mercedes in the points. And if we do, that would be very good news indeed for the Woking team. They desperately need some success, and most of all here in Germany, where their Mercedes engine comes from. 7th is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. 8th is Martin Brundle, 15 seconds behind the race leader. 9th is Johnny Herbert in the Sauber. 10th is Jos Verstappen. 11th is Diniz in the Ligier. 12th is Mika Salo, who has regained the track after having been bundled off earlier on. And we ride now with Damon Hill, and that is Rubens Barrichello's Jordan in front of him as they come up climbing towards the chicane, and you'll see how very tight it is. No, you won't, because we're not staying with Damon Hill. But they're turning into the chicane now. No, they're not. They're approaching it.
Now, it looks like David Coulthard started to eke out a bit of an advantage, and that it's clearly Barrichello who's holding up the train, albeit just of Hill there, with then Schumacher behind, rather than being David Coulthard who's doing the holding up. And Hill's having a look at Barrichello, and is he well, they're trying to out-fumble each other, and this is the kind of opportunity as Hill slides a bit. Barrichello is all over the place. Barrichello blocking the inside line. Hill must surely go round. Hill must take the line on the exit of this corner. But these two cars are so evenly matched on power.
And look at Schumacher. He's right up there, and so is Hakkinen. 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th together, and Hakkinen having a look at Schumacher. So Michael has got the major problem that often happens in Formula One, the problem of keeping somebody behind him whilst also trying to get past the man in front of him. The man in front is Hill, the man behind is Hakkinen, and in front of Hill is Rubens Barrichello. As they exit the right-hander, drop down a bit, and they're on their way down now to the hairpin, the lowest part of the course, and just about the slowest corner on the course.
Now, I've just seen Rubens Barrichello tear off a rip-off from his visor. Now, he do that because he couldn't see as much as he wanted to beforehand. Here's this moment. They're coming into the last corner. Barrichello on the inside. Hill goes for the outside. Barrichello's absolutely side by side. Barrichello's keeping it neat and tidy. He's getting on the power. Schumacher's on the power. Hill is. They're all coming out of there, but that was a real out-fumbling session that started when Hill tried to have a look at getting around Barrichello. Roundabout now, he was coming up to this chicane, and I just wonder whether or not Barrichello now has a clearer field of vision. Maybe that was slowing him. He pulled off the rip-off. Let's just see if he can keep a more comfortable gap ahead of Hill.
Rubens Barrichello has been the whole of his Formula One life with the Jordan team. He's had one pole position in his life when he started from that position for the Belgian Grand Prix in Spa. That was due to weather conditions, but he started a superb second subsequently in one of the Grand Prix in this very car, the Jordan Peugeot. And we're back again with Michael Schumacher now, chasing Damon Hill. The gap between them is about 7/10 of a second, And Hill and Barrichello are definitely at this point easing away from the Ferrari, because remember how close Schumacher was at the chicane with Häkkinen right behind him. And it's lap 13. Villeneuve's lead is now nearly 8 seconds. A brilliant drive, but as I said earlier on, he hasn't got the traffic to contend with. That Coulthard, Barrichello, Hill, Schumacher and Häkkinen have all got. Those are the places down to 6th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen is only 1 second behind Mika Häkkinen in 6th place in the Ford V10 powered Sauber, and Martin Brundle is 4 seconds behind Frentzen in 8th position. Into the chicane and out of it with Damon Hill. Looking at Rubens Barrichello ahead into turn 13, starting another lap. This is completing the 14th lap of the Grand Prix of Europe, down the straight towards us at some 170 miles an hour. The gap between Coulthard and Barrichello is 2 seconds. Hill, Schumacher, Häkkinen, there's Frentzen. And behind Frentzen there is a bit of a gap, 4 seconds to be exact. Martin Brundle. So both the Jordan Peugeots are in the top 8. Martin is going better in this race. He's had a very difficult time with the Jordan because he just could not get it to suit his driving style. And the thing to do is to adjust the car and not your driving style. Into the hairpin, out of it. Enormous crowd here. Coulthard, Barrichello, Hill. And it's a very, very good and heartening race for the McLaren Mercedes and for David Coulthard, who is demonstrating very clearly that he's lost none of the touch that he had in the Williams-Renault team. Not that anybody thought he had. It was the car rather than Coulthard, and now that he's got the right equipment, he's making the most of it. 2nd place, 8.5 seconds behind Villeneuve as Hill into the chicane has another look at Barrichello's Jordan. And Schumacher has a look at Damon Hill. And Hill firmly shuts the door in the German world champion's face, and Häkkinen can see all 3 of them. If there's any touching, then Häkkinen isn't the man who's likely to benefit. Turn 1.
And indeed, Häkkinen's got a straight line speed advantage with the McLaren Mercedes over Schumacher with the Ferrari. That again is about 5 miles an hour at the end of the main straight. But this is great racing, it really is, and it just shows you the kind of congestion you can get when someone like Barrichello, who's doing the best job he can, is clearly holding up Hill and is holding up Schumacher. And in Hill's efforts to get around Barrichello, he's exposing himself to being slower, because normally when a driver tries to find a way by, it's not the fastest line, and that can allow somebody behind, in this case Schumacher, as we've seen twice now, to get the run and potentially get by. But that was good firm driving, firm assertive driving from Damon Hill then. In other times he might not have closed that door firmly, and it needs assertive driving so that we don't get the kind of incidents, because when Schumacher knows that, he's less inclined to let his nose keep popped up the inside. He'll know that Damon means business, and that's what he's done so far. But it is of course important that Damon does recognise that finishing is all important. Really what would shake his confidence hugely is if he was to end up tangling with somebody, and this is a great scenario, potential scenario for that to happen, and be out of the race. He needs a clean race to prove that he can fight and mix it when he's back there in the pack.
Well, I was about to say that we haven't seen much of Jacques Villeneuve. There he is, and it's good that we should rejoin him, because this is an absolutely magnificent race that the young 25-year-old Canadian is driving. He's now almost 10 seconds ahead of this jostling, struggling, thrusting pack who are fighting for, in particular, 3rd position, with David Coulthard just in front of them. And Hill there has already given the lie to Schumacher's rather arch remark, suggesting that Damon Hill had been under no pressure this year, and he might well crack when he was, by getting past the man who made that remark, moving up into 4th position and having so many hard goes at Rubens Barrichello. But Barrichello is driving a magnificent race too, because he's resisting this non-stop pressure from Damon Hill, proving that the Gary Anderson designed Jordan with the Peugeot engine, which is in its 3rd season of racing, can do the business now. He's only got 2 cars in front of him. Coulthard, who is about 2.8 seconds in front of the Jordan, and Villeneuve, who is some 10 seconds ahead of this battle. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, Barrichello, Hill, Schumacher.
Right, they're now about to start their 17th lap. Now, if any of these cars drivers were running a three-stop strategy, they'd be coming in at the end of this lap for their first stop. But quite frankly, looking at the lap times they're doing, I don't think anyone was intending to do that. But one question mark is, will Williams bring in Damon Hill earlier? Because frankly, he's not going to get by Rubens Barrichello, I don't think, unless Barrichello makes a mistake. And so if they're on a two-stop strategy, and that is the expectation, I think, from Jordan there, and indeed most of the teams, the first stop should be around about lap 22, lap 23, and that's in 5 laps, 6 laps time. It might just be that Williams will bring in Hill earlier. They could spend less time in the pits, because although he'd have fuel in the car, although he wouldn't have depleted his fuel tank capacity, he will need, therefore, a shorter stop, and that'll get him ahead of Rubens Barrichello. And we're going to see Williams having to be careful to make sure that when they do bring Hill in, it's a quick, short stop that gets him out in front of Rubens Barrichello.
Rubens Barrichello is the key man in this race, 3rd position. He's undoubtedly holding up Hill and Schumacher. That's no discredit to him. They've got to get past him, and if they can't do it, that's their problem. But in going a little slower maybe than Hill or Schumacher could go if they could get past him, this is allowing Coulthard and Villeneuve there to pull away. Look, there's the whole length of the start and finish straight between Jacques Villeneuve and Coulthard in the red and white McLaren, who is just that distance ahead of Barrichello, Hill, Schumacher, Hakkinen 6th, Frentzen 7th, and Frentzen is driving a terrific race as well, because his lap time of 1 minute 23.2 is within a 1/10 of a second, the same as the lap times of the cars immediately in front of him, Barrichello, Hill, Schumacher and Hakkinen. The Sauber Ford is looking much better here in Germany at the Nurburgring than it has at any of the 3 previous races. That'll be thanks to the adjustments and changes that the Cosworth engineers at Northampton have made to the Ford C-Tech engine. And still, Coulthard is second. Over the crest comes Barrichello. Just keeping his line so that Damon Hill can't get past him.
And Barrichello went very wide then. That's lost him a little bit of time, but it's track position that's working for Barrichello at the moment. There was just no way that Hill could benefit from that. Now they're coming down into the fastest part of the course, up through the gears now to, that's the maximum speed just before that chicane, but again Hill's too far away. It really looks, I don't know if there's any action from the Williams pits. I can't see anything happening in terms of getting tyres ready, so maybe they are going to let it run its full distance, and or maybe they're even planning on doing just one stop. And again, we'll get the best indication of that from Jacques Villeneuve, because if he was going to make his first stop of 2, it would be in another 4 laps time. If it's going to be his only stop, it won't be until lap 34, and that's some 16 laps away.
Lap 19, the 240 drivers, Montermini and Badeur, did not start the Grand Prix of Europe because they failed to qualify within the 107% time limit. Lacey is out after a collision, proving again that his reputation for being a headstrong driver is well deserved. Eddie Irvine out in the Ferrari, Olivier Panis out in the Ferrari. Gerhard Berger has been into the pits to stop after that problem he had right at the beginning of the race, and is making the running, because Berger has still made the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 22.0. He did that on lap 8, and that is 9/10 of a second outside Michael Schumacher's lap record. And Barrichello continues to stave off Damon Hill there as they come into the chicane. Michael Schumacher still cannot make any progress against the Williams ahead of him. Mika Hakkinen has got the same sort of gap between his McLaren and Schumacher's Ferrari, but it looks to me, as the Williams mechanics get ready for Damon Hill to come in, it looks to me as though Frentzen is starting to inch up on the 3 cars in front of him. So Damon Hill coming in, probably the next lap, which will be lap 20.
Now that's what we want to see, because ironically Hill's got a bit of a gap there, and no doubt he made some kind of mistake that let Barrichello get away, because Damon Hill is certainly going to be faster than Barrichello. But by bringing him in now, getting a fresh set of tyres on, it should be a short stop. I think we need to look at something like 6 or 7 seconds. I I hope Hill there hasn't got a problem. It's very unusual to see Damon Hill lock a wheel. Very usual to see teammate Jacques Villeneuve lock wheels and use curbs and get on the dirt. He's generally a rather rougher driver, whereas Damon has a great deal of finesse, but a short stop is what's required from Williams. Now, what's going to be good for Jordan's point of view too, I wonder if Damon Hill's got a problem actually. I wonder if he's got a puncture, because he's really dropping back at a further rate, and I would have expected him to close on Rubens Barrichello there. Well, the Williams team are ready, so if that is the problem, he's going to have it sorted out very quickly, but it may well just be the kind of earlier stop we thought was appropriate, so that he's not going to lose time following Barrichello anymore.
Well, Barrichello's last lap was 0.8 of a second faster than Damon Hill's. He presumably hasn't got a problem, because he has failed to come in. He's passed the pit lane entry with its 75-mile-an-hour limit, and there to prove that fact is Heinz-Harald Frentzen coming in the Sauber Ford from 7th position as Coulthard, followed by Barrichello, followed by Hill, followed by Schumacher, followed by Häkkinen, go through. And in terms of constructors, as Frentzen rockets out of the pit lane at that statutory 75 miles an hour, it's a Williams leading, a McLaren second. In 3rd position, it's the Jordan of Barrichello, then the Williams, the second one, so both the Williams are in the top 4. Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, and the second McLaren Mercedes of Mika Häkkinen. So McLaren Mercedes are looking good here in Germany. They're both in the top 6.
Well, something's definitely happened with Damon Hill. He really should be hounding Barrichello hard now. Another possible scenario, we didn't see it, but was maybe Hill got very wide, got on the dirt, and radioed in, and they had another set of tyres waiting in case he'd taken the edge off the tyres. Let's see if he peels into the pit this time. They're coming down to the chicane. There's the pit lane on our left. Is he going to peel in? Well, it looks like he's carrying on again, and he is indeed. So maybe he's now happy with the car, whatever the moment was. And although we've just heard it's got in on the pit board, so it's this lap that Damon Hill is going to come in on. This is his 22nd lap. Well, 22 is the first of the 2 scheduled spot times. It's a 67-lap race once again, so lap 22, lap 44 are the 2 intermediate laps.
And if Damon has got a problem, we have to ask ourselves why Michael Schumacher isn't closer to him and trying to get past from the 5th position that he's already in. Mika Häkkinen, you see, is dropping back a bit. The gap between Häkkinen, who is 6th, and Schumacher, who is 5th, is now 1.4 seconds as you watch Coulthard coming up towards the chicane, and out goes Jos Verstappen in the newly liveried TWR Arrows. That's a new livery to demonstrate the fact that everything at the Arrows team has changed now that Tom Walkinshaw's organisation has taken it over, and my goodness it has. And Damon Hill will very shortly be flipping the Williams left and right through the chicane, and then peeling off directly to the right into the pit lane. Now, it's of paramount importance that he gets an excellent pit stop, because Schumacher will probably be in shortly after him. Damon Hill into the pit lane, and Schumacher could pass Damon Hill when they have both rejoined, and so Hill is now into the pit lane and pulling in now. Watch the front of the car go up with the back. Off will come those 4 tyres and wheels, and they go through now. Mika Häkkinen has gone through, of course. Schumacher has gone through. Martin Brundle has gone through. So has Johnny Herbert, who was in 8th position in the Sauber. And you can see at the top of your picture the Williams mechanic still working away. This is a fantastically long stop now. Is that because he's taken on a gigantic amount of fuel, or is it because they had trouble replacing one of the wheels? Hill is having to rejoin behind 2 cars, so he's got an even bigger problem. One of them is Johnny Herbert, and the other is Martin Brundle.
Well, we understand that Patrick Head, the technical director of the team, was having a good long look at the back of the car, looking at the suspension perhaps, and then gave the car the all clear. So that would fit in with the fact that Hill had some kind of a problem, maybe still has some kind of a problem with his Williams car. And Adrian Newey, as well as Patrick Head, having a look. That's Gerhard Berger coming in for his stop. Berger goes out. So these people are all on 2-stop strategies, but let's just hope that Hill has not got an ongoing problem with his Williams car. It's a long stop. This is looking like it's going to be very, very difficult for Damon Hill to win this Grand Prix.
And that was Gerhard Berger, that is Gerhard Berger exiting the pit lane as Michael Schumacher enters it. Now this is where Schumacher should move ahead of Damon Hill after they have both stopped. That's dependent, of course, on the Ferrari driver getting a much better stop than Damon Hill did, and he has. Damon's was of the order of 20 seconds. Schumacher's of the order of 8 seconds. Brand new tyres on the front, scrubbed rears, and on lap 24, with Villeneuve still to come in, he leads David Coulthard, who has also got to stop. That is Villeneuve leading the Grand Prix of Europe, exiting the left-hander at the bit curve, and now dropping down towards the Hudson-Bach Bogen, and he is 14 seconds ahead of Coulthard, who is 2 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Schumacher is 4th, Häkkinen is 5th, Frentzen is in 6th position. I won't go through all the rest, but just tell you that Damon Hill rejoined in 11th place, 55 seconds behind his teammate Jacques Villeneuve. But a lot of those seconds, of course, will have been accounted for by the fact that he was in the pits. Villeneuve will lose some of them when he comes in, but it's not looking good for Damon Hill at the present moment. And now we're with Villeneuve.
And Coulthard and Barrichello have both come into the pits for their respective stops. There's Barrichello pulling in, Coulthard's behind him. Left out, still lapping, is Jacques Villeneuve. And at the moment we have to wonder, let's just look at this McLaren stop. Well, 9.8 for Coulthard, not a great stop, but not bad. Barrichello we're seeing on the left. Well, that's a long stop for Barrichello there, 12.5 seconds. I don't think there's any way that we can expect him to get to the end of the race. It's too early for that to be a possibility. And there's Schumacher right over the back of, looks like, is it Häkkinen there?
Coulthard, it's David Coulthard. And Michael Schumacher is challenging, has challenged, and has succeeded in getting past the McLaren Mercedes, and the German crowd roars its massive Teutonic approval as their man moves up ahead of David Coulthard. And we ride through the chicane with Jacques Villeneuve. He's not stopping this lap, so he is now on his, or will be in just a second when he goes over the starting grid and the finish line. He is now on his 25th lap. He's on his 26th lap in the 67 lap race. Coulthard down to 3rd position, Schumacher up into 2nd place.
And that shows the benefit of slick pit work there. That wasn't a tremendously fast stop. And this is Mika Häkkinen coming in for his first stop. Coulthard there was at rest for 9.6 seconds. It was 7.7 for Schumacher. And that's why, despite Coulthard being ahead, Schumacher came out and is now ahead. That's why it's so very, very important. Now that's a better stop, you see, 6.6 seconds to Coulthard's 9.6, and I'm sure the same amount of fuel was put on both those cars. Maybe new tyres by the look of it on Häkkinen. And Häkkinen's coming out right when he's ahead of Coulthard. Häkkinen's coming right out. So that's again more evidence of what slick pit work will do. We've got a battle of McLarens now. Can Häkkinen do anything about Schumacher?
Can he do anything about David Coulthard? Because Coulthard is on warmer tyres, and the fact that the man ahead of him, Mika Häkkinen, is his teammate, won't deter the Scotsman one iota. He wants the place just as much as Mika Häkkinen does. Meantime, we're pretty certain that Jacques Villeneuve is coming in at the end of this, the 26th lap. There he is, and we're in the pit lane with the young Canadian who is still leading the Grand Prix of Europe. But you watch him in the pit lane. I'm going to watch turn 13, which is the last corner on this track, and see whether Michael Schumacher goes through into the lead as Villeneuve is having a cool and calm stop. I don't think that Schumacher's going to be nearly close enough. No, he is not, because Jacques Villeneuve at the end of the 26th lap rejoins and is still in the lead of the Grand Prix of Europe as you look down the start and finish straight, and you see coming towards you the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher in 2nd place. So Villeneuve has stopped, Schumacher has stopped, Häkkinen, who is 3rd, has stopped, Coulthard, who is 4th, has stopped, so has Barrichello 5th, and Frentzen is now up into 6th position in the Sauber Ford, and Heinz Harald Frentzen has yet to score World Championship points this year for Sauber. It would be great for him and for the team if they could do it here in his home country of Germany. So, lap 27, McLaren versus McLaren, and Häkkinen is easing away from David Coulthard. Is he easing up on Michael Schumacher? Doesn't look like it to me. Villeneuve still leads, and at the end of this lap, we'll get the true position as we join the Canadian in the Williams Renault.
That's Damon Hill right behind Martin Brundle. Hill back in 10th place. Brundle in 9th, and just ahead of Brundle it's the Ligier, I think it might be the Ligier Deniz, that, yes it is, that has not yet stopped. So Deniz will be peeling off, but before that I'm sure Brundle will be by, and Hill's, well, quite a lot of congestion again there. Hill's going to be being held up by Brundle. Both Hill and Brundle have stopped, which is certainly where the best action is at the moment.
And Hill, of course, has got past Johnny Herbert. You remember when he came out of the pits, both Brundle and Herbert went through just in front of him. So Damon, now in 10th position, has got ahead of Herbert. Now Martin Brundle is a gentleman driver, but he is not going to yield willingly to Damon Hill. Damon's got to fight for the place, and my goodness, he will do so. Schumacher is now the fastest man on the track. He's just gone round quicker than anybody else, and Villeneuve is on his 28th lap, and the gap is down to 8.7 seconds. At this stage of the Grand Prix of Europe, it is not inconceivable that Michael Schumacher could win it. He's the only Ferrari left on the track. He's driving here today like he did last year in the Benetton Renault, and that is absolutely magnificently going for his first Ferrari win, going faster and faster all the time. Maybe he's got a better set of tyres on the Ferrari than his first set, in which case that could make quite a dramatic difference. But lap 28, Villeneuve leads, Schumacher second, 8 seconds behind him. Häkkinen is third, just 1.5 seconds ahead of his teammate David Coulthard. Rubens Barrichello is fifth, Heinz-Harald Frentzen is sixth, then it is Salo seventh, Deniz eighth, Brundle ninth, with Damon Hill 10th, right behind him.
You may wonder how Pedro Deniz can manage to keep Martin Brundle and Damon Hill behind him. Well, Deniz will be running very low on fuel at the moment. His car will be a lot lighter, but even so, there's no question that he's holding up Brundle, and Hill goes by Martin Brundle. So that's the onto the main straight here. That's the corner, the right-hander after the chicane with those bollards. Brundle, then that's surely by Deniz, is that there? And no, Deniz is still ahead. Brundle having another look to see if he can counter and come back at Damon Hill, who locks the wheel, and he's going to want to get by Deniz. He's got another left-hander to go.
But behind them is Jos Verstappen, the Dutchman, in the TWR Arrows with the Hart engine. I've talked a lot about him in the first 3 races of this year with every justification. I'm now going to talk about him again, because look where he is. Jos Verstappen right up behind Johnny Herbert as Hill hits Deniz, and through goes Herbert, and is Hill stopping? Well, I don't know what happened to Deniz, but this time, unlike last year, Damon Hill has kept the Williams running. Now, everybody will hope that Damon Hill has not damaged his suspension in hitting Pedro Deniz. I have no doubt that we'll see a replay soon, and we'll be able to work out exactly what happened. But Damon Hill, thrusting, pushing, charging through from the front, is now in 9th position. Here's that replay.
So have a look there. Deniz squeezes up on the inside of Hill, forcing Hill. Hill's left front touches Deniz's right front. Now the question is that left front suspension damaged? It didn't. Here's another look. Hill going for the inside and then coming across. That's that tap. I don't think it's hard enough to damage the car, but I'm afraid I'm not impressed with Pedro Deniz there. He must have known perfectly well that he has not made a pit stop. Now he's making his pit stop, and to come in and try and block the line for Hill, who he knows is clearly hugely faster than Deniz, and Hill, in fear of Deniz squeezing him, went up onto the inside, and in so doing lost his braking ability, and that's what caused him to go to the side of Deniz.
And Brundle and Herbert went through, and I'm pretty sure Verstappen went through as well. So yes, he did. Verstappen did go through. So that means to say that that coming together with Pedro Deniz, for which I would frankly blame Deniz rather than Damon Hill, cost Damon 3 places. He's got an enormous amount of work to do again, and we have to wonder too whether any stones from that gravel trap got from the front wheels up into the radiator area. They could conceivably cause problems. I thought I saw quite a lot going in and half expected Damon to come into the pits, but he hasn't done so. That is Michael Schumacher in second place, and my goodness, he is flying, because now the gap has come down between him and Jacques Villeneuve. Both of them stopped, incidentally. Jacques Villeneuve now leads by only 3.8 seconds. This Nurburgring gave us a fabulous race last year, and it's giving us a fabulous race this year.
Now, in fact, the fastest stop in that first round of stops came from Mika Häkkinen or the McLaren team, or Mika Häkkinen's car, 6.6 seconds. But there, unfortunately, is going to be what's going to completely undermine that. Häkkinen has got a speeding penalty. That means he would have gone faster than the 75 miles an hour. He's going to have to come back into the pits. He's going to have to stop in his own pit. We've got new regulations this year. It's not at the end of the pit lane. His own team will have to be holding him for 10 seconds before he goes out. That's going to cost him something like 20 seconds, and 20 seconds is going to put him, well, back in round about 9th or 10th position. In fact, he may even end up dicing with Damon Hill.
I can hardly believe this. Michael Schumacher's previous lap was 2.2 seconds faster than that of Jacques Villeneuve. He's carving great lumps out of the Canadian's lead, and Coulthard will move up into third position when Häkkinen comes in for that penalty stop. Schumacher has now got ahead of the Minardi, and there's the gap. That is Villeneuve leading. This is Michael Schumacher in second place. This is lap 32. It's a 67-lap race. There's a lot of action still to come from the Nürburgring, and Jacques Villeneuve has got a fight on his hands now with a vengeance. And we're getting supreme evidence now as the McLaren is stationary in the pit there, and out goes Mika Häkkinen after his penalty stop. And you will have noticed, incidentally, that now the penalty stops are taken at the pit of the driver who suffered the penalty. They don't have to come up to the end of the pit lane any longer, and his own pit personnel are responsible for making sure that he stops for the mandatory 10 seconds. Well, you saw there Jos Verstappen, and now you look back at the Williams-Renault of race leader Jacques Villeneuve. How far behind him is Michael Schumacher on their 32nd lap? You can see as Villeneuve exits the chicane. Now Schumacher does the same thing. Now the gap on the previous lap was the previous lap for one was 3.8. Then it was extended a bit to 4.1 seconds. Let's see what it is now. Into lap 33, and it's the same. So 1 minute 22.6 for Villeneuve, 1 minute 22.4 for Michael Schumacher. The gap is static at the present moment, but Jacques Villeneuve has got traffic in front of him now, and that will give the flying Michael Schumacher there the opportunity to close up on the Williams-Renault as they come down to the hairpin. That's Schumacher. And Villeneuve has got to get past that car ahead of him. I'm just trying to work out which one it is. It looks like one of the Minardis to me.
I think that's Pedro Lamy there in the Minardi, but we've got a really genuine race on. There goes Villeneuve past the Minardi of indeed Pedro Lamy, who has actually been outclassed by his teammates this year. It was Marquez, the Brazilian. He's been replaced by Fisichella, and Fisichella was also faster than Lamy in qualifying. But the real interest centres on Villeneuve and on Schumacher. They are trading fastest laps, certainly for them, between them, so they are equal in terms of lap time on the track. And the important thing for us too is that is a genuine battle, and by that I mean that they are both on the same fuel strategy of a two-stop run. They have both got to make one more stop, and that's going to be at about another 12 laps. That'll be their second and final stop. So it really is close, and it's getting closer. Schumacher has closed that gap from being 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds. It's now just 2.4. He's, of course, got to get by Lamy himself. Now, can he do that without losing time? This is where driving expertise, judgment really comes in. It's absolutely crucial. Lamy goes wide. Schumacher, like Senna does have this technique for intimidating the driver ahead of him, to let him move wide. Now, would have Lamy have moved wide to Jacques Villeneuve? I suspect not, but nevertheless, I think the gap's about the same. That's the important thing. Well, it's increased by 0.8 of a second, and that just shows you how little it takes to lose those precious tenths of a second with traffic that can take laps to slowly eke out a tenth by tenth, maybe a couple of tenths a lap. To find 2 tenths in a lap is not easy. To lose 8 tenths in one back marker is very easy.
Well, the genius of Michael Schumacher is going to make a lot of people in the Formula One world eat humble pie if he keeps going in the Ferrari, because a lot of people here had written it off. There was talk of a new car being built to replace this, quote, unsuccessful, close quotes, 310 Ferrari. And Michael Schumacher has always said, I don't expect to do well this year. I hope to win races. That's Jos Verstappen and Johnny Herbert in the chicane. And Verstappen is missing the bollards and cutting across the course. He could be penalised for that. But Schumacher has always said, give him credit, that there's a lot of work to do on the Ferrari. He hopes to win races in 1996. He certainly doesn't expect to win the championship, although he would hope to do it and aim to do it in 1997. And just look at how Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari is gaining on Jacques Villeneuve. You saw the proof on the caption there. He's taken 0.3 of a second out of the Canadian's lead. And Jacques Villeneuve, of course, this is only his 4th Grand Prix, having had a couple of second places in Australia and Argentina. And we're with the Williams driver now, Damon Hill, and he's got ahead of him Johnny Herbert. Now, Herbert is in 8th position, so therefore, obviously, Damon Hill is in 9th position. And Damon has got ahead of Jos Verstappen, and he's still got in front of him not only Johnny Herbert, but Martin Brundle, who is 7th, Hakkinen, who is 6th, notwithstanding the fact that he has stopped twice. Heinz-Harald Frentzen comfortably in the points now at 5th position in the Sauber. Barrichello is 4th, Coulthard is in 3rd position, Schumacher is 2nd and getting ever closer. Now here's the danger man for Villeneuve, Diniz. We saw what happened with Diniz and Hill. Pedro was not watching his mirrors, and if he's not watching them again, the same thing could happen with Jacques Villeneuve. And Schumacher now right on the tail of the Williams Renault, and the crowd understandably is going berserk. They can see the possibility of their man, double world champion Michael Schumacher, getting into the lead as Pedro Diniz makes it very difficult indeed. But Villeneuve goes through, Schumacher goes through, but Schumacher can now see his quarry ever clearer in front of him.
Well, that really was another bit of inept driving from Diniz. He must have known who was behind him with Villeneuve and Schumacher, and yet he braked that late going into the end hairpin that he locked up his right front wheel, the inside front wheel in a big way. He should have just lifted off, kept control, not risked flat spotting a tyre of his own car, and let these two, certainly let Villeneuve go by straight away, and then let Schumacher go by after another corner or two. But because he tried to fight it, he's lost even more time than he should have done.
Villeneuve coming up to Ricardo Rosset, the Brazilian, in 13th place in the TWR Arrows. Villeneuve, Schumacher. Just remember how far back Michael Schumacher was. There's Rosset, there's Villeneuve, into turn 1. A left-hander at turn 2. Now it's a bit of a descent to turn 3, which is a left-hander at 100 miles an hour. Turn 4, the right-hander, which follows. They take slower at about 70 miles an hour. This is it. Look at Schumacher all the time. They're building up speed now to 180 miles an hour, braking for the chicane, the hairpin, the slowest corner of them all.
Well, that was a great demonstration just further back in the way that racecraft changes depending on whether or not you're letting the leaders come through or you're battling with true rivals. There we saw Rosset very courteously let both Villeneuve and then let Schumacher go by, the complete gentleman. He then was obviously acutely aware that Diniz, with whom he is racing, was coming up behind him, moved across to take the inside line for the next corner, defended his position vigorously, and as far as we know, he's still ahead. Very different driving styles for different situations.
I was talking to Pedro Diniz yesterday, and he told me he had aspirations to be world champion. Don't we all? But I think Diniz has got a fair way to go. On the other hand, Schumacher has already been there twice, last year and the year before, and this is getting to be it. Lap 37 completed in just a few seconds. Over the line, that's it, into lap 38. Even Steven virtually. Williams-Renault leads. Ferrari second, and Jacques Villeneuve has got a challenge on his hands like he has never had before in Formula One. This is his fourth race. The Indy champion of last year, the man who won the Indy 500, who did what Nigel Mansell did, switched from one discipline to the other with terrific success. Can he keep it up?
And as we can see there, he's also got a clear track ahead of him. The car in front of Villeneuve is actually Gerhard Berger. Berger in 12th place, he's 22 seconds ahead on the road. And we can there also see from that camera that's on the left-hand edge of Villeneuve's rear wing, that's a rearward camera, and very fortuitously placed it is too for us, because we're going to see quite a bit of Schumacher in the back of that camera, looking backwards, I'm sure, as the race goes on.
Now, Damon Hill is up into 8th place. He's got past Johnny Herbert. He is about 4 seconds behind Martin Brundle, but he is lapping about 0.8 of a second faster than the Jordan. So he will be with Martin fairly soon. Race order, lap 38. You look at the two leaders going through to complete the lap and start their 39th, which they have just done. Villeneuve leads Schumacher. Coulthard is 13 seconds behind them in the McLaren and 4 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello, well in the points again in the Jordan Peugeot. Well done, Ruben. Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 5th in the Sauber. Hakkinen is 6th in the McLaren. Brundle is 7th, 32 seconds behind the leader and 4 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is 8th. Johnny Herbert is 9th. Verstappen is 10th. Salo is 11th. Gerhard Berger, still running, is in 12th position. As you look at Fisichella, the Italian ex-Formula 3 driver who's driving for Mercedes in the ITC, International Touring Car Championship, and Frentzen goes across the chicane, and he's coming up to lap Fisichella, who is 16th. Those are the leaders. Still at it, Villeneuve and Schumacher. And Villeneuve is responding to the challenge where he was a second a lap slower than Michael Schumacher. They are now lapping in an identical time of the order of 1 minute 22.5 compared with a lap record of 1 minute 21.2.
Well, this is just the kind of superb performance we've expected for a long, long time now, many years from Michael Schumacher. He really is making best possible use of that Ferrari in a way that probably no other driver out there could. I think Williams are going to be a little bit disappointed in the job there that Jacques Villeneuve's doing. You know, the Williams has been considerably superior to the Ferrari throughout the weekend so far, probably at least half a second, if not a second faster. And Villeneuve in this situation is obviously not able to really race any faster than Schumacher,
who is the fastest man on the track, 1 minute 21.8. And Damon Hill has just put up his fastest lap of the race in 8th position to close within 3 seconds of Martin Brundle, who is in 7th place. Hill, in fact, has just gone fastest. He's just gone round in 1 minute 22.69 and has got the gap to Martin Brundle down to 1.5 seconds. I hope I'm not confusing you. You are watching Villeneuve and Schumacher battling for the lead. I am talking about Damon Hill, who is 8th, getting ever closer to Martin Brundle and ever closer to getting into the points, because Martin Brundle is only about 4 seconds behind Mika Hakkinen, and Damon Hill is lapping about 4 seconds a lap faster than Hakkinen in the McLaren. So we really do have the prospect of Damon Hill getting into the points. And the race order is Villeneuve, Schumacher, you look at them now, Coulthard 3rd, Barrichello 4th, Frentzen 5th, Hakkinen is 6th, Brundle is 7th, Damon Hill, the fastest man in Germany, is in 8th position.
I think one of the interesting things that this race shows is just what a huge advantage being out in front is, because once again, had Damon Hill achieved that, he would be, I suspect, serenely sailing on to his 4th consecutive victory this year. But by losing that time in the pits, well, by making the bad start to start with, then losing the time in the pits, and he is then finding it pretty difficult to work his way through, to pull his way up. He's been 10th, he's 9th, he's 8th, but it's taking 3 or 4 laps to make each step. and yet one might have thought he'd be sweeping his way through, overtaking one car a lap to get back to the front. But, you know, it really is very, very difficult down there. Once you get bogged down in traffic, you need a big performance advantage, and I mean about 2 or 3 seconds a lap to be able to sweep by the cars ahead of you. Otherwise, as we've seen, you just have to bide your time and wait for the opportunity, and even getting by someone like Diniz can be difficult.
Lap 41 out of 67 as you watch the leaders, and you saw a short flash earlier on of Damon Hill right behind Martin Brundle now, fighting both of them for that 7th position, which is just 1 place off being in the World Championship points, where Damon Hill has been very, very comfortably in every race so far this year. 1st position in Australia, in Brazil and Argentina. Who's going to win this race? At the moment it looks as though it must be either Jacques Villeneuve or Michael Schumacher. Either of them, for different reasons, would be a tremendously popular winner. If either of them does win, obviously will have broken the stranglehold that Damon Hill appeared to have, as we ride with the McLaren now of Mika Häkkinen chasing Heinz-Harald Frentzen Sauber, which is 5th. And you can see what the gap is. They're down the start and finish straight now at about 170 miles an hour.
You can also see Häkkinen's arm waving frantically. He's clearly most unhappy with the driving of Frentzen. That's the implication down there. And there he is. The McLaren does have a straight line speed advantage over the Sauber. It's probably again 5-7 miles an hour faster in a straight line.
And Häkkinen going for Heinz-Harald Frentzen. This is where the superior grunt of the Mercedes engine and the daring of Mika Häkkinen, who is coming back after that colossal crash he had in practice at Adelaide, will take precedence, and he's done it. Mika Häkkinen gets past the Sauber up into 5th position on lap 42. Change of place. Over the line go the first 2, Villeneuve and Schumacher. Still nothing in it between the Williams and the Ferrari. Coulthard is 20 seconds behind, but we've got a battle developing for 3rd place too, because Rubens Barrichello, as you watch a replay of Mika Häkkinen taking Heinz-Harald Frentzen Sauber on the outside. David Coulthard is only a couple of seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. So, race order: Villeneuve, Schumacher, Coulthard, Barrichello, Frentzen, Häkkinen.
Now, we've heard a bit more about events in the Williams pit, and in comes what looks like one of the Saubers now. We heard a bit more. Yes, it is indeed Frentzen. Frentzen comes into the pit. This will be his 2nd stop. They're now on lap 43. We're going to expect the 2nd stops any lap now, and indeed it's going to be crucial to watch Schumacher's stop. Ferrari will need to get Schumacher out in a shorter time than Villeneuve. 7.8 is good. The lead of this race, the best chance, the only chance I would suggest, of Schumacher leading this race by purely outperforming Villeneuve, will come from the Ferrari team making a shorter pit stop. But back to Damon Hill. When he had that moment when he was losing time to Rubens Barrichello, apparently he thought he had a puncture. As a result of that, that's why the Williams team got ready for an early pit stop, and then he decided perhaps that he hadn't. Anyway, he came into the pits as scheduled, and then the Williams team wondered if he had a broken rear anti-roll bar. That again could cause the car to feel odd, to roll around, to slide a bit too much, potentially at the back end. And either way, it seems that neither of those things were the problem, and because Hill is now setting, or has set, fastest laps of the race, and indeed he still holds the fastest lap of the race, so it looks like he was mistaken in thinking that he had a puncture or indeed a broken roll bar.
Ferrari are getting ready to receive Michael Schumacher. Williams are getting ready to receive Damon Hill, and you look at Jacques Villeneuve leading the Grand Prix of Europe, and Damon Hill is in the pits as you see Schumacher exiting the chicane. There is Damon. This is where discipline really counts. Remember, his last pit stop was over 20 seconds while they looked at the back of the Williams. Up to 75 miles an hour, no more Damon, or there's a penalty. And Damon Hill flies out of the pits in front of Ukyo Katayama and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and Gerhard Berger. As into the pits comes Michael Schumacher.
This needs to be sub 8 seconds, I'm sure. Preferably low 7s. They might even get it into the high 6s. It's just about 1/3 distance to go now, so he needs exactly 1/3 of the race's length of fuel. Let's watch it. New tyres going on. Look at those tyres, you can see the writing on them, see the label on the right tyre, 8.5. Not super quick, but he is going to be quick on these new tyres. That's going to help his lap time by as much as half a second a lap for probably his first 5 laps, until they tend to even out with a set of tyres that we call scrubbed. And by a set of scrubbed tyres, we mean a set of tyres that's done 2 or 3, maybe 5, 7 laps, something like that.
Well, he's got a traffic problem which he might have hopes to avoid. He is between Rubens Barrichello and David Coulthard. Coulthard, who is 3rd, Barrichello, who is 4th. Hakkinen there was in 5th position, and I don't think we'll be there any longer, because I'm expecting Martin Brundle to have moved up ahead of him, up into the points for the Jordan team, and that would be magnificent news for them too. Just as McLaren Mercedes are looking for a good result, so are Jordan, Peugeot, Gerhard Berger into the pits. This is the 3rd time that the Benetton driver, ex-Ferrari, and he stalled it. But Gerhard Berger has stalled the Benetton. All his hard work has been thrown away because he's losing points and losing momentum, of course. Lap 46 out of 67. The battle continues. Schumacher's had his 2nd stop. Villeneuve has not.
I wonder if there's something a little bit tricky about a Benetton clutch, because it was a Lacey that stalled in the last Grand Prix at his stop at Argentina, and Berger this time. But quite frankly, with Berger being down in 10th place, he's really not going to lose a lot. There, in comes to the pit, is Rubens Barrichello from his current 4th place spot. The one we really have got to be totally focused on, though, is of Jacques Villeneuve, because if anything goes wrong with the stop of that man, that is Jacques Villeneuve in his Williams car. If anything goes wrong with that, and let's remember the 8.6 seconds stationary for Schumacher, Villeneuve can only afford maybe half a second longer than that. Otherwise, we could have Schumacher in the lead.
Yeah, but Coulthard is making things very difficult for Michael Schumacher, who's all over the back of the McLaren. You'll notice that neither of them have caught, never mind got past, the TWR arrows of Ricardo Rosset. So I think Schumacher is probably losing enough time for Villeneuve to retain his lead if he has a good stop. This is lap 46, and Coulthard is keeping his place as Villeneuve comes in now. Now this is the stop that could decide the race. It's of paramount importance that the Williams mechanics get it right. Remember that Schumacher's stop was of the order of 7.88 seconds, and there's very little in it. Now, we should look down the pit lane and see Michael Schumacher coming out of the last corner as Villeneuve exits the pit. There's Schumacher, and there coming into the pits are Ricardo Rosset and Coulthard, who has done the job of keeping Michael Schumacher back and enabling Jacques Villeneuve to retain the lead on this, the 47th lap out of 67 in the Grand Prix of Europe. Now, there's Villeneuve on new tyres. There is Schumacher on new tyres in respectively 1st and 2nd places as Coulthard exits the pit lane. And is he ahead of Martin Brundle? Yes, he is. There is Martin Brundle, who is in 4th position ahead of Rubens Barrichello. But Brundle has only stopped once and Barrichello has stopped twice. Deep breath. Lap 47. Jacques Villeneuve leads the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nurburgring in Germany, round 4 of the World Championship, from Michael Schumacher. And they've both had their pit stops. I don't think they're going to be in again. David Coulthard is 3rd. Martin Brundle in the points for the first time this season, hopefully breaking his jinx at the Nurburgring, is 12 seconds behind Coulthard and 11 seconds ahead of Barrichello, who is 5th. Mika Hakkinen is 6th and 1 second ahead of Damon Hill, 7th.
You must remember that Brundle has not yet come in for his 2nd stop. He's in 4th place artificially at the moment, as he will drop back once he's done that. But that was an immaculate pit stop from the Williams team. Last year, some of their pit stops were not as slick as those of arch-rival Benetton with Schumacher, but that was a crucial stop for them, and the whole team would have known that. They would have known that if anybody lost so much as 1 second in the length of that pit stop, Brundle comes into the pits. If they'd lost so much as 1 second, that would have let Schumacher into the lead. and that would have been a lead that would have been very difficult for Villeneuve to get by. But as it is now, if Villeneuve doesn't make mistakes, then I think we should see him carry on to win what will be, in 20 laps' time, his first Grand Prix victory. Look at the new tyres again, telltale flashes of those white labels. That should help Brundle's pace in this last third of the race, or again, at least for the first 5 or so laps.
Oh, what a cracker the Grand Prix of Europe is turning out to be. There's Villeneuve, there's Schumacher. So the situation that obtained before they came in for their second refuelling and tyre stops obtains again. Villeneuve leads. There's the gap between himself and the 310 Ferrari. And all the many thousands and thousands of Ferrari lovers all over the world, in Germany, Italy, Britain, Australia, Canada, which is where the great Gilles Villeneuve had his first victory for Ferrari and himself, will be hoping that Michael Schumacher keeps the 310 going after all the hard work that the Ferrari technicians, led by John Barnard and everybody else at Maranello and Guildford, have done on the car to get it into its current state. And what Michael Schumacher has been saying all the time is coming to pass. Be patient and we'll get it right. I'm being patient. Don't be precipitate and judge us as having failed before half season. And it looks as though he's going to at worst finish in second position. Villeneuve is holding his place. He's matching the Ferrari time, 10th of a second for 10th of a second on lap 49 out of 67.
And Damon Hill is in the points. He's now 6th, just 0.3 of a second behind Mika Häkkinen in 5th. All of the front runners have now completed their pit stops for the race. We are now just going to see these cars, unless they have any kind of a problem, complete the remaining 18 laps of this race. So it's Villeneuve, 2.6 seconds from Schumacher, Coulthard, and apparently there's another penalty from Mika Häkkinen. Well, that is absolutely extraordinary. We're going to have to presume that there's something wrong with his pit lane speed button, or certainly the adjustment of it, because normally what happens if a driver exceeds the speed limit in the pit lane, he just has forgotten to push the button that restricts it down to the correct speed.
So now Damon Hill is in 5th position. He will be when Häkkinen comes in. Damon Hill will automatically move up into 5th position in this fighting recovery after losing 20 seconds. Montezemolo not looking at all happy after losing 20 seconds when he came in for the check on the rear of his Williams Renault, then colliding with Pedro Diniz and dropping down to 11th place. He's up into 6th position now, and most importantly, not to say vitally, he's in the World Championship points. Like I said earlier on, the thing to do if you want to be world champion is be consistently in the points, and Michael Schumacher is consistently pushing. He has just taken half a second out of the lead of Jacques Villeneuve on lap 50. The gap now is just about 2 seconds.
As I was saying, one really does have to wonder why Häkkinen has exceeded the speed limit on 2 separate occasions. He would have known that he obviously had his penalty before, and so that penalty was from a pit lane speed limit infringement on the first time. And it is just important to push these buttons that stop the car's speed exceeding a preset level at the appropriate time. And if a car does exceed the speed limit, normally the button either hasn't been pressed at all or has been pressed too late. And I would have thought Häkkinen would have been extra careful that second time round. So one does wonder whether or not the actual speed that it's set at is not quite right. And maybe the first time he thought he just pressed it too late or too early, and the second time then he did the same thing, assuming that that it was just that, and he still found himself speeding. Big blow for Häkkinen because he's driven a great race. And indeed, McLaren really have shown that they are making progress. It's great to see Ferrari making progress as well. It looked to be a difficult time in qualifying. Schumacher's pace back in third place on the grid really wasn't the sort of thing that I'd expected here. In comes Häkkinen. This is for that stop. 10 seconds back in his garage once again. It's going to be a pretty familiar garage for Häkkinen.
And Gerhard Berger is 11th now. He hasn't been lapped by the leaders, as have Diniz, Rosset, Lamy, Katayama and Fisichella, and Mika Häkkinen exits the pit lane. But Gerhard Berger is 11th and has got bearing down on him very rapidly indeed. The race leader Jacques Villeneuve, who has got Michael Schumacher just about 1 second behind him. So it's very important to Villeneuve and to Schumacher that Berger moves over and lets them through. I don't doubt that he will, because Gerhard Berger is in his 184th Grand Prix. He's used to this business. He's not used to being caught and passed and lapped, but he knows the score, and I don't think he's going to be difficult about moving over. We'll soon know. This is lap 52 out of 67, and you're watching Michael Schumacher driving, in my opinion, as brilliantly here this year in the Ferrari as he did last year in the Benetton to win the race by catching and passing Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. Now, the gap is now under 1 second, and Damon Hill is the fastest man on the track. He has just gone round in 1 minute 21.6, which is half a second outside last year's lap record, and he is now less than 6 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, who is fourth.
So let's just think, how far can Damon Hill get in this race towards the front? 52 on they're on their 52nd lap now, 67 laps, so it's 15 laps to go. He's going to certainly catch Barrichello. Coulthard is just 1.2 seconds ahead of Barrichello, so I think he's going to have Coulthard for third place if he can find a way by. And he's going to get more determined as the race goes on. I would have thought third place is there. I don't see him being able to do anything about the huge 28-second gap that Coulthard is back from Schumacher.
That's Fisichella with Villeneuve right behind him, and Fisichella turns in, and that enables Michael Schumacher to close right up on the Williams. He's closer now than he has been in the whole race. There's Berger, but Fisichella is down in 16th position. He has already been lapped. He's going to be lapped a second time. But the important thing from the race leader's point of view is that he moves over and lets him through. Because if Villeneuve judges his passing move incorrectly, that will give Schumacher the opportunity to pass him. And look how hard he's trying now. This is coming out of the corner, and you can see it.
And what Schumacher did there was take the wide line, not because he thought he was going to be able to get by Villeneuve around the outside, but just by going in wide, he can come out faster. And that meant that they're both past Fisichella now. That meant that Schumacher was able to close up more on Villeneuve, as indeed he has. It's very important to use positioning on the track, and at a time when you don't think you can get by somebody when they're being held up, at least by doing something like that, turning in wide, you're going to get a faster exit, and that can then reap rewards further on.
And fortuitously, we've got a rearward-facing camera on Jacques Villeneuve's Williams Renault, and you can see exactly what the score is with Michael Schumacher right behind him. Completing the lap, this is the end of lap 53. They run wide onto the rumble strip, which edges the track. Now down to turn one, the comparatively slow right-hander. Into turn two. That's at about 100 miles an hour they're doing here. Down the descent to turn three, which is another 100-mile-an-hour corner. Turn four is a quick one, and this is getting up towards the second fastest point on the course, the descent to the hairpin.
Damon Hill is now just 3.6 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, and he's lapping on average about a second faster. And he's got that advantage too over David Coulthard. 1.9 seconds now from Coulthard to Barrichello. That's relatively constant, but Hill is closing.
And we're on lap 54. The race order is these two, Villeneuve and Schumacher, fighting for the lead as Alesi and Schumacher fought last year. Coulthard is third in the McLaren, 27 seconds behind Michael Schumacher and Villeneuve. Rubens Barrichello is fourth, 2 seconds behind Coulthard, and about 3 seconds in front of Damon Hill, who is fifth and solidly in the points. Martin Brundle is sixth in the points. So both the Williams are in the points. A sole Ferrari is in the points. A sole McLaren is in the points, and both the Jordan Peugeots are in the points. They have been there before, only for something to fail, usually the Peugeot engine. But after last year, the Peugeot technicians have worked tremendously hard on developing not only power but reliability, and thus far they seem to be succeeding in this race. Barrichello was fourth in Argentina. Martin Brundle has yet to finish a Grand Prix for the Jordan team. How good it would be if he could finish in the points, his first finish.
Now Villeneuve and Schumacher clearly lapping very much on the same kind of pace. The Williams is the faster car on the straight. Watch the way that Villeneuve pulls out, coming out of the corners, and yet Schumacher closes up on the way in, because Schumacher must be taking time out of Villeneuve in the corners. Again, the Williams is about 5-7 miles an hour faster at the end of the long straight that we're going to see at the end of this particular section. He's up through the gears: 5th gear 170, 6th gear 175, 180, 185 miles an hour. Head hard on the brakes. Now look at the black lines. That's where the wheels have been locking, or on the verge of it. 2nd gear 70 miles an hour, punching out. Now here's a good example too. Let's see what Schumacher does. Schumacher visibly closes that gap. Now here's when Villeneuve gets on the power, but we can also see that in fact the Ferrari wing is actually deeper. If we look on front section, you can see that there's a greater depth of wing on that Ferrari than the Williams. So it's not all just about horsepower, it's about aerodynamic efficiency. And the Ferrari, by having bigger wings, is able to potentially have a greater level of grip than it would have running smaller wings. Maybe an equal grip to the Williams, but it does make it slower down the straights. It's a trade-off.
Meantime, every place that Damon Hill can gain means more World Championship points. You saw the gap was 3.6 seconds between him and Barrichello. I'll tell you, it is now 1.5 seconds, because Damon has again gone fastest, only 0.2 of a second outside the lap record. 1.5 seconds behind Barrichello, who is 4th. Then there's an enormous gap to Coulthard. Realistically, the best that Damon Hill can hope for is 3rd position, unless either Villeneuve, Schumacher or Coulthard in front of him on lap 56 have a problem. But it really does look as though we're going to have a new winner for 1996 here in Germany. Is it going to be Jacques Villeneuve in only his 4th Grand Prix, or Michael Schumacher in his 73rd Grand Prix? That's Jean Todt in the red sweater, the headman of the Ferrari team, with Luca Montezemolo, the headman of Ferrari. P1 to Villeneuve, 0.6 seconds. He doesn't need telling what the time gap is. He can see that scarlet Ferrari looming large in his left mirror and his right mirror.
And the next worry for Villeneuve is Pedro Lamy there in the Minardi. This is the kind of thing, when you get the back markers, that could provide the opportunity, a stumbling block for Villeneuve, and it just takes a little bit of that to let Villeneuve through. But behind these dicing pair, I really think Coulthard has been truly exceptional this weekend. He's had his best ever qualifying position for McLaren in 6th place. McLaren themselves have done a lot of work with Mercedes-Benz. They are closing the gap. That's clear from what we've seen today. But also from Coulthard, this race last year was one he'd hoped to win. He was on pole position, and indeed talk was of, should I let Damon Hill come by, or should I go for my own Grand Prix victory? Well, that kind of prospect hasn't looked likely this year, as David Coulthard has got to grips with the setting up of the car. And it takes a while to understand how to get the best out of a car, how to set the suspension and the wings, to learn how to use it. Well, he's done a good job this weekend, and let's hope it signals revived fortunes for McLaren, but also a much more competitive drive from Coulthard. And Schumacher slides there. He really is giving it everything at the moment. We saw the back end of that Ferrari step out, exiting the chicane as Frentzen goes off. Frentzen, well, he looks like he's going to regain the track. He looks like a man on a mission there, and he has indeed.
Don't underestimate Jacques Villeneuve's ability to stay ahead of Michael Schumacher. He's on lap 58. It's a 67-lap race, and if there's one thing that Jacques Villeneuve is used to from his Indy racing experience, it's passing and resisting pressure. There's an enormous amount of it in Indy racing, and that's what happened to Frentzen as he came up behind Rossick's TWR arrows, and through go Johnny Herbert, and there's a replay of it. Spins a full 360 degrees straight across the gravel trap, which is a demonstration of the fact that it's not working at all, because the gravel track is supposed to stop you, and all that happened there was that Frentzen managed to keep his momentum going. So, lap 58, back to the front, this is it. It's still Villeneuve, Schumacher, as last year it was Alesi, Schumacher. And Schumacher last year took the lead from Alesi with just 3 laps to go, with an absolutely incredible passing manoeuvre at the chicane, which he and Villeneuve are approaching now, when Schumacher literally put his front and rear wheels around those of Alesi's Ferrari and dared the Frenchman not to move over. And Alesi did move over. But Villeneuve is a very, very tough character. Let's see what's going to happen.
Frentzen comes back into the pits. but the next few laps are not going to be enjoyable ones, particularly for the Benetton team. Well, that looked as if Frentzen had got underway even before the car was back on the ground then, the wheels spinning, and that can be hazardous. But with Berger there, is about to be lapped by Villeneuve and Schumacher, and really Benetton would have expected their cars to be right up with those two in this race. Clearly Berger had a problem that he had to pit for off the start, and then he stalled his car. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting to see how the gap varies. And Hill has got past Barrichello now. Damon Hill up to 4th place with David Coulthard just 1.9 seconds behind. Sorry, I beg your pardon, David Coulthard is 1.9 seconds ahead of Damon Hill.
So I'm wrong. Damon Hill might yet be on the podium with his teammate Jacques Villeneuve if he can catch and get past his ex-teammate David Coulthard. Hill in the Williams Renault, Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes, and Häkkinen in the second McLaren Mercedes is well out of the points after those 2 penalty stops of his. He's in 8th position. And as you watch the leaders again exiting the chicane, going round turn 13, the last of the track, to complete their 59th lap in this 67 lap. It's Villeneuve leading Schumacher by the gap you can see, and they're still coming up to pass Gerhard Berger. Coulthard is 3rd, Hill is 4th, very close indeed to the McLaren. 5th is Barrichello, 6th is Brundle, so the 2 Jordans are still in the points, as are both the Williams, the Ferrari of Schumacher, the McLaren of Coulthard. 7th is Johnny Herbert, 8th is Häkkinen, 9th is Salo, 10th is Gerhard Berger, who looks as though he may well be lapped. Now, Gerhard Berger's lap time, 1 minute 23, is about 0.8 of a second slower than that of Jacques Villeneuve. So, as you watch Ukko Katayama, who is 14th and a lap down, there is Berger. Now, there's the battle for the lead. Really, the tenths of a second are irrelevant here. You can see exactly what the situation is. I remember years ago when I was talking about there being, say, half a second between the leader and the second place man. James Hunt would say to me, you can see what the difference is, you don't need to give the time, so I'm not doing so. And it's that close. Salo and Berger are 9th and 10th, and Montezemolo can sense a victory as he smiles at Niki Lauda and shakes his fist. He can sense that Schumacher can catch Villeneuve and get past the Canadian. I am not at all sure that that is the case. This is lap 61. Another fizzing race at the Nurburgring. Gerhard Berger being caught.
Well, Gerhard Berger could be the one that's going to influence what happens with these two. If there is going to be a final opportunity in the closing 7 laps of this race for Schumacher to get by Villeneuve, it could well come as and when they come up behind Berger. And if Berger is just a little bit slow in letting Jacques Villeneuve by, that could provide the opportunity for Schumacher to have a go. And of course, Ferrari was Berger's team from last year.
Look at this, Coulthard and Hill battling for 3rd. So just as there's a titanic scrap for 1st between Villeneuve and Schumacher, so there is for 3rd between Coulthard and Damon Hill, with a point in it now. 4 points for 3rd position, 3 points for 4th position. If Hill can get past Coulthard at the end of this 16 race season, that 1 point might make all the difference in the World Championship. Damon Hill on 30 points is 18 ahead of Villeneuve at the present moment, but in a long season like this, anything can happen. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen retires from the Grand Prix of Europe, as he did last year, when again last year he precipitately went off. He's been off this year. He won't be at all a happy man. Lap 62, there are the leaders.
So the best eyes of the race now, in fact, for 3rd place with Coulthard and Hill. It might just be 1 place between 3rd and 4th, but it means more than that, because being 3rd means getting on the roster, and there's something rather special about that. Something special that David Coulthard's going to want to savour desperately, so he's going to be in no mood whatsoever to give an inch to his former teammates. And of course these two, we're looking at them now. Coulthard ahead, Hill behind. They were both teammates at Williams last year. Hill, oh, and that's Coulthard there, locks the wheel up on braking. Nothing too much wrong with that, but you don't want to do it too many more times, but it's slowed up a little bit. Can Hill get by? The straight line speed, the all-important straight line speed of these two cars is not far apart. The Mercedes engine has made big strides, but this is where, I think Damon Hill had to lift off there. He was looking like he was going to get the chance for a run down at David Coulthard. This was where Hill touched Pedro Diniz around that bottom hairpin. It's a third of the way round the track, and then up through the gears, third, fourth, fifth, just a little bit of a feather, easing off the throttle, 140 miles an hour through that, swerving left, swerving right, up to sixth gear at 175, hard on the brakes, down to third, 90 miles an hour, feeding it in. Now this is where Hill needs to be close, because we're coming on to the back straight. In fact, it has a kink in it, and if he gets closely positioned, he'll be right on his tail to potentially have a go out braking into the following chicane. He's too far behind, he's not going to do that, and we're going to have to wait potentially to the main straight.
Well, now, Gerhard Berger is coming up behind three tail-enders, and behind Gerhard Berger is the battle for the lead between Villeneuve and Schumacher, which you're looking at now on lap 63, and they are certainly going to be caught, those tail-enders. That is Michael Schumacher. And how McLaren and Mercedes must be aching for David Coulthard to stay where he is. In, of all countries, Germany, for a McLaren driver to finish on the podium this year for the first time would be a marvellous fillip to the Woking team. Neither Häkkinen nor Coulthard have been on any of the three steps of the podium this year. Now, so look at Gerhard Berger. Well, you can't because he's not in the picture of them. Now he is, and you can see 1, 2, 3 cars in front of him. I'll identify them for you in just a second. And as Villeneuve and Schumacher get closer and closer, coming through to complete their 63rd lap out of 67. Now, that's Rosset, that is Katayama. Behind Katayama is Salo. Berger goes through. And all the time they get, now there's Rosset, there is Katayama, there is Gerhard Berger, behind him Salo, and Villeneuve is catching the Tyrrell Yamaha. You can see it. And we've got one of the classic potential problems there. That's two dicing Tyrrells of Salo behind, Katayama in front. It's been a long time since Katayama has been on the track ahead, and Schumacher is looking at the outside again. You see what's happening there. Villeneuve is taking a conservative line on the inside. Schumacher has got a run on the exit. This is this 145 miles an hour right left. Schumacher drops back because he hasn't got that all-important airflow in front of his car, and that makes a bigger difference on the faster corners. But this is Schumacher's chance. And we used to think the Nurburgring was a dull circuit. Think of it last year. Look at it this year. Salo in 9th position has got Villeneuve behind him. Salo will realise it, and he moves over. Well done, Mika Salo, and he lets both Villeneuve and Schumacher through. So now there is another gap. Mika Salo in 9th position. You saw Rosset, you saw Katayama. Katayama, therefore, is the next target. Look back. That is Schumacher. There is Rosset, there is Katayama. Berger has already lapped both of them and is about to do so again. So Villeneuve and Schumacher are on their 65th lap out of 67. Gerhard Berger has not been lapped. I do apologise to him, but it looks as though he may well be. And Katayama is already in a position of having been lapped. Lap 65, only 2 laps to go after this one. And Villeneuve and Schumacher are not really gaining on Gerhard Berger, who's lapped in 1:23.7 compared with Villeneuve's 1:23.6. And Berger goes past Katayama. So now it is the turn of Jacques Villeneuve to get past the Japanese driver. He does so. Ukyo moves over and lets Schumacher through. Away with Schumacher as he closes right up on Jacques Villeneuve. I remind you that this is the 65th lap. There are only 2 laps to go after this one.
And Schumacher is really piling on the pressure now. He's braking later and later. He's locking his front wheels, a bit of smoke coming off. He knows that it doesn't really matter now if he does that a few times, because there are only these 2 laps to go, and he needs to do everything he possibly can. It probably won't be enough, but it's not going to be for lack of trying.
Katayama behind Rosset, Villeneuve behind Katayama, Schumacher behind Villeneuve. Through now, this is the end of their 65th lap. Only 2 laps to go. Villeneuve pulls out. Schumacher pulls out. Schumacher having a look at Villeneuve. So Katayama has been passed. It's Gerhard Berger now, and I think he may well succeed in staying ahead of them. There are only 2 laps to go. Gerhard Berger's last lap, 1:24.3. And that was 0.3 of a second slower than Villeneuve, but Gerhard Berger was in amongst traffic. So I think the Austrian will manage to avoid being lapped. You can see the gap for yourselves. This is lap 66. Just this lap and the 67th lap to go. And the order is Villeneuve-Schumacher with the distance that you can see between them. Coulthard is 30 seconds behind them, but only 3/10 of a second ahead of Damon Hill, who is fourth. Rubens Barrichello is fifth, 1.5 seconds ahead of his teammate Martin Brundle. Johnny Herbert is in 7th place. Hakkinen is 8th. Berger is 9th. 10th is Salo, who has been lapped. 11th is Deniz. 12th is Rosic. 13th is Katayama. 14th Lamy. 15th Fisichella. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen has retired. So 15 out of the 20 who started this Grand Prix of Europe are still in the running as the leaders come through to start their last, and this could be a historic lap. It could be the lap in which Jacques Villeneuve from Canada, in only his 4th Grand Prix, who started from 2nd on the grid, manages to stay ahead of Michael Schumacher and win his first Grand Prix. His father won his first race at Montreal in Canada. Jacques Villeneuve could well win his first Grand Prix at the Nurburgring in Germany, and where better a place to win it. So they are down to the hairpin for the 67th and last time.
And David Coulthard starts the last lap ahead of Damon Hill. It's only 0.2 of a second, but he is still ahead.
Out of the hairpin. Up towards the chicane. But first they go round the curve at turn 8. Now the curve at turn 9. Now the descent at 170 miles an hour down to the Hatzenbach Bogen, and the climb up to the chicane. Gerhard Berger is going to stay ahead of Villeneuve. I'm going to stick my neck out and say that Jacques Villeneuve is going to stay ahead of Michael Schumacher and win the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nurburgring. They exit the corner, turn 13, the last corner, and the checkered flag goes out, and Jacques Villeneuve wins for Williams-Renault, the team's 4th successive victory, his first, and this is the battle for 3rd position between David Coulthard and Damon Hill. Now, Damon would be wise not to go mad in this last few yards and try to get past David Coulthard and risk going off as he did last year. And right behind him is Barrichello, who is 5th. What an incredible finish. Coulthard 3rd, Damon Hill 4th in the points, and Barrichello right behind him in 5th position, with Martin Brundle finishing 6th. Wowee, what a race here at the Nürburgring. Jacques Villeneuve beats Michael Schumacher, who shakes his fist not at Villeneuve but at the crowd, the adoring German crowd, who will have underlined it, their admiration, respect, hero worship for their countryman Michael Schumacher, who here today at the Nürburgring, his home circuit, very close to his own home at Kerpen in Germany, has underlined the fact that this Ferrari, this much maligned Ferrari 310, is a car to fear from now on. From now on, the series moves to the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola next weekend, and then on to Spain and Monaco. And Michael Schumacher said that they expected to be in a winning position by the Canadian Grand Prix, which is the 8th of the 16 races. Well, they're jolly near in a winning position now, but that is the man who did it. Jacques Villeneuve, his first historic and a superb victory at the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nürburgring from Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard, Damon Hill, Rubens Barrichello, and well done Martin Brundle for 6th.
Yes, a fantastic drive there from Villeneuve. He did the all-important thing and got off the line first, and that was the crucial advantage that he got. And then having done that, he simply did not make a mistake. The Williams pit work was perfect, and there's nothing that Schumacher could do about it. But the two teams who were really under pressure to perform here at the Nürburgring did, and that is Ferrari, and there's no doubt Ferrari are a real threat to Williams from what we've seen here today, although one wonders what Damon Hill would have done had he got off the line first. but also Michael Schumacher has been at his brilliant best. That was absolutely stunning stuff from Schumacher as he pulls up there in front of Charlie Whiting. And then behind, David Coulthard has done total justice to the work that McLaren have done, improving that car with the Mercedes power still further. Coulthard defending off hill superbly, Barrichello close behind. An incredible race with the winner there, Jacques Villeneuve. That's his trainer, Mika Salo, being thrilled for him. But Michael Schumacher is probably going to be one of the happiest men of the whole lot, because that was a stunning drive from the German here on his home ground.
Well, Jacques typically looking comparatively underwhelmed by the whole thing. He's had a lot of wins in his life, but now he breaks into a smile. And look at Schumacher's helmet. You just caught a glimpse there of the very special helmet that he's had designed with a virtually vertical back to it in order to assist the airflow into the airbox of the Ferrari and its V10 engine. Well, Michael can be well pleased with himself, as so even more, frankly, can Jacques Villeneuve. A worthy winner who resisted the most colossal pressure from a tremendously experienced double world champion. A happy, smiling Michael Schumacher. We've seen him looking pretty dour this year on the podium in Brazil, where he finished third, and subsequently his two failures to finish in Australia and Argentina. But now we saw there the Schumacher that we're used to seeing in the past with the Benetton Renault and Benetton Ford teams. A jubilant, tremendously happy Michael Schumacher. Now things have changed in the World Championship, because Damon Hill is on 33 points. He was 18 points ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, and thanks to the Canadian's victory, he has now scored 22 points and is therefore 7 closer to Damon Hill, only 11 points behind his teammates. Jean Alesi is still in third position on 10 points, but Michael Schumacher, thanks to his second place, moves up to join Alesi as third equal with him. In fifth position still, it's Eddie Irvine, who of course failed to finish in the Ferrari here in Germany, and Mika Hakkinen, who came home in 8th position. And the positions at the end of the German Grand Prix, as the serried ranks of Germans wait to cheer their hero, is a victory for Jacques Villeneuve, a historic first victory in the Williams Renault, only 0.762 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. In third position, David Coulthard, the first podium place for Coulthard this year and for McLaren Mercedes this year. He finished 0.677 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who was fourth and in the points vitally. Rubens Barrichello was only 0.2 of a second behind Damon Hill, nearly got that fourth position but didn't. He was fifth. So both the Jordans finished in the top 6 places, because Martin Brundle was 6th and the last points scorer, but a vital first point with his new team, and that will give him tremendous heart and confidence after the very difficult first 3 races that he's had this season. There is the Nurburgring, the highest point you can see there, and there are the men. Coulthard, Schumacher, and Dickie Stanford, who is the Williams team manager, will be receiving the Constructors' Champion. you can be proud of your Jacques Villeneuve. Britain can be proud of the Williams team, who have added to their Constructors' Championship glory. They now have 55 points compared with Ferrari's 16 points. And Ferrari have moved ahead of Benetton in the Constructors' Championship with just a 3-point gap between them. McLaren are now on 9 points, thanks to David Coulthard's 3rd position. The Jordan team have got 6 points. They only had 3 before, so they have moved up to 5th position. We're ahead of the Tyrrell team. So a moot point about whether the better drive was Jacques Villeneuve, Michael Schumacher, or for that matter, the superb recovery of Damon Hill. Let's say even to all of them, because they all drove here in Germany absolutely magnificently. I think this is Jacques' first experience of the Champagne spraying. I stand to be corrected, but I'm not conscious of them doing it in Indy racing, and it's certainly his first experience of it in Formula One. Wonderful occasion for him. He will, of course, have sprayed the champagne for his 2nd place earlier on this season in Australia and Argentina, but there is nothing like the big bottle and 1st position. Let's have a look back at the Grand Prix of Germany, or even the Grand Prix of Europe.